Ladies who married there, just a friend. What was the moment everything changed? For the longest time, Daniel was just my best friend. I used to joke that he was basically my brother, and people would laugh and nod because it really did look that way. We met in college during one of those classes where the professor decides to assign random partners for a project. I remember being annoyed at first. I wanted to work with someone I knew. But then Daniel walked up to me with this goofy grin, holding a cup of coffee bigger than his head and said, "Guess you're stuck with me." We worked well together, got an A, and somehow we just never stopped hanging out. Soon he was my go-to person for everything. When I couldn't figure out a math problem at midnight, he was the one I texted. When he needed someone to proofread his essays, I was there. He drove me to the airport when I went home for the holidays. I helped him shop for birthday gifts for his mom. It wasn't flashy. It was just steady. Over the years, he became woven into the fabric of my life. People teased us constantly. "You two act like an old married couple." My mom once asked if I was sure there was nothing between us. I'd laugh, roll my eyes, and insist he's like a brother. He'd chuckle and say, "Yeah, not my type." We both wore the just friends label like armor. We even dated other people. I had my share of boyfriends and he had girlfriends. But no matter who we were with, Daniel was still Daniel. When my car broke down, he didn't hesitate to pick me up, even if it meant being late to his own plans. When his grandfather passed away, I was the one who sat with him at 2 a.m. while he cried quietly into his hoodie. We had this unspoken rule. When the world fell apart, we showed up for each other. Looking back, I think the seeds were always there. I just didn't recognize them. The moment everything changed wasn't some cinematic fireworks in the sky revelation. It was much quieter than that. I had just gone through a brutal breakup, the kind that makes you swear off dating for life. One evening, I was on the couch in sweatpants, puffy-eyed from crying, when Daniel showed up with Chinese takeout and a bottle of cheap wine. He didn't ask. He just let himself in, like always. We ate. We watched a terrible rom-com, and eventually I started venting. I told him I felt like no one ever truly understood me, that I kept picking guys who wanted parts of me, but not all of me. He looked at me for a long moment, then said quietly, "I get you." 3 simple words, but they hit different. It wasn't pity, it wasn't a throwaway comment. He said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world, and in that moment, something inside me shifted. I noticed things I had ignored for years, the way his eyes softened when I laughed, how he remembered every little detail about me, like the fact that I hated mint chocolate but loved mint tea, the way he never made me feel too much or not enough. It was like I was suddenly seeing him in color, when before I'd only seen him in black and white. Of course, I panicked. I told myself it was just vulnerability after the breakup, that I didn't really feel that way. But the more I tried to bury it, the clearer it became. The little moments piled up, the way my heart jumped when he brushed against me, how safe I felt in his hugs, the fact that he was always the first person I wanted to share news with, good or bad. A few weeks later, we were walking home from the grocery store, arms full of snacks. Out of nowhere, he reached for my hand. Normally, I would have laughed and teased him, but this time, I didn't. I held on, and it felt right, like we'd been holding hands forever and just hadn't realized it. That was the real turning point. No big confession, no dramatic kiss in the rain, just a simple, ordinary gesture that carried years of unspoken truth. Dating him wasn't awkward. It didn't feel like crossing a line. It felt like we'd finally admitted what was there all along. There was no getting to know you phase, no pretending. He already knew me inside out, the weird habits, the insecurities, the dreams, and I knew him, his flaws, his strengths, his secrets. That foundation made the shift from friends to partners seamless. Not everyone understood. Some friends said it was weird or too convenient. Others thought it wouldn't last because there was no mystery. But the truth is, the spark had been there all along. It just wasn't obvious. Once it finally lit, it burned brighter than anything I'd ever experienced. The day I truly knew it was forever wasn't when he proposed. It was when my mom got sick. I was overwhelmed, juggling work, hospital visits, and my own emotions. Daniel didn't flinch. He drove me to appointments, cooked for me when I forgot to eat, sat with me through long nights at the hospital. He never once complained. He just showed up again and again. And I realized this wasn't just love. This was partnership. Years later, he's my husband. We laugh sometimes about how blind we were, how everyone else saw it before we did. People ask me, what was the moment you knew? And honestly, it wasn't just one. It was 1,000 little moments that finally came together. But if I had to pick, it was that night on the couch with cheap wine and cold noodles when he looked at me and said, "I get you," because he always had, and he still does.